Happening in Washington, but this is the headline this morning on the New York Post talking about the terror attack yesterday in London. It says anguish, terrorist strikes in the shadow of Big Ben. This is a place, if you've been to London, you've been here. You've stood outside of Big Ben, and that's what's scary. It could happen to anyone.
And this woman right here who had just been mowed down by the terrorist on the bridge.
It's like she's looking at us. She looks over to the right to the photographer. It's like she's saying, can you believe this just happened?
Help me. All right, there are brand new details unfolding overnight in that deadly terror attack on the streets of London. Raids and searches happening around the UK at this hour. Police making 7 arrests linked to the horrific attack outside the British Parliament.
Greg Palcott is live in London with what we know about this suspect so far. Good morning, Greg.
Hi, Ainsley, Steve, Brian. Behind me, the scene of the crime. The target of terror yesterday, the Houses of Parliament right here in the heart of London. The place around me right now, a scene of police on the ground, on the River Thames, up in the air. The place remains on shutdown as investigators dig into this horrible act. The latest figures we're getting, along with 4 dead, including the attacker, 29 people still are in the hospital, 7 of them fighting for their lives. Officials once again today confirming international terrorism, Islamic radicalism was behind the attack. The identity of the attacker, they believe they know who he is. He's been on their radar. They're not giving the name out, but there were raids, 6 of them around Birmingham, a northern British city. 7 people arrested. This, as we hear the police sirens, forensic investigators combing around this scene, the bridge, Westminster Bridge, leading to the Parliament, where that SUV of the assailant plowed through the crowds. A bloody, horrible scene. And then he plowed into the perimeter fence around the Parliament, stabbed to death an unarmed policeman at the entrance to the Parliament before he was shot dead. That policeman who was killed, a father of 3, 48-year-old, was made tributes from around the world, police departments, cities around the world, paying homage. And inside the Parliament, the House of Commons in session today, 1 minute of silence. They're carrying on. Back, guys. Back to you.
All right, Greg Palcott live along the River Thames.
I just love the first thing you hear right away is, it looks like he acted alone. Oh, yeah, by the way, we arrested 7 people. It looked like he acted alone. And, you know, you see what he seems to have done, and you say to yourself, what would make someone do that? But wait a second, didn't we just hear about that? A series of attacks in Israel. Then you have the year anniversary of Brussels. And then you have the car, the Nice and Berlin right after that. And then you remember Ohio State over here. And they've also, in this case in Ohio State, they come out, the attacker comes out with a knife. And I just feel terrible for that cop who, for London laws, was unable to protect himself because he had no gun.
This is why people in America think it's important to secure our borders. They are scared that we're going to become Europe, that people aren't going to have to assimilate. They can live in their little sects, in their little circles. They can go to their mosque. They don't have to worry about assimilating with the rest of the country. And that's where the danger comes in.
Well, you know what? You kind of sound like Newt Gingrich. Listen to this.
When people come here, we need to go back to teaching people how to be American, to assimilating them into an American civilization. We absorb lots of people from lots of places. We can do it again, but part of that requires that we defeat this left-wing mythology that you can be multicultural and still be a single country. I think we can have many peoples come to America, but they need to learn to be American if they're going to live here.
And I guess the same thing would apply to the British. If you want to go to Britain and live there, you should embrace their history and embrace their culture rather than bring what you want to their country. Understand you're going to their country.
And maybe embrace something that Donald Trump, President of the United States, now has said all along. We need to do some extreme vetting. And Nigel Farage, who's going to be with us in about an hour, says that should be the case over there.
I'm not against immigration. I want us to have sensible, managed, balanced immigration. But for goodness sake, you have to vet people. When Donald Trump tries to make America safer, when Donald Trump tries to make sure that these scenes that we've had in Paris and Brussels and Berlin and now London aren't repeated in America, we get people on Fifth Avenue and behind me in Westminster out on the streets protesting.
Right. And of course, how would you be protesting if someone you knew was underneath one of those wheels yesterday? If you said, well, they're sitting there's a tourist or they're just going to work and they're run over by what seems to be another Islamic extremist unprovoked attack in a major Western city? And if that's someone you know who got run over or was forced to jump in the river to avoid being run over, do you still protest on Fifth Avenue the next day?
Ask the
That's
Angel
the
moms.
question.
Ask the Angel moms. Ask Kate Steinle's mom. Donald Trump, he was on the campaign trail. He kept saying, we want people here that love our country. I'm not against immigration, he said, but I am against people who don't want to be here, who don't want to assimilate. Here's the thing. If I move to Paris, I'm going to learn French. I want to be in Paris. I want to learn the language. I want to become part of the culture.
Sure.
I'm from South Carolina. No one leaves South Carolina because the culture there is amazing. I decided I wanted to come here to New York to pursue my dream of journalism, and I have assimilated within New York City. I love it here.
Well, the investigation continues over there. They just had a moment of silence just about a half an hour ago. They're trying to figure out where the guy got the car. I mean, it's so simple. The guy had a knife and he had a car, and it looks like he rented it up in Birmingham. The other thing, and this is the sad thing, is the attack on Parliament could have been prevented because after he jumped out of the car, he ran through the vehicle gate. It is always slightly ajar. It's never locked because so many people are coming in and out. Had they simply followed the protocol and locked the gate, which they rarely do, that police officer at Parliament would not be dead this morning.
And again, the one thing you have in common, we have a lot of officers who watch this show. Guess who's in the line of fire in the war on terror? It is, again, law enforcement on the streets. They're here for a totally different reason. Next thing you know, they should actually be issued a blue uniform and a camouflage uniform because they're actually fighting the war on terror.
And in London, they're not allowed to carry guns. They don't carry guns. Listen, let us know what you think. What do you think about this and how it affects our country? Do you think that people need to assimilate? Do you agree with Newt Gingrich?
I'm very curious to see the Muslim mayor. This is a great opportunity for him to say, if this turns out to be an Islamic extremist, you don't represent Islam. This is what it's about. He has a unique opportunity, and I've only seen him so far, and it could have just happened. I've only seen him praise law enforcement. When it emerges that this guy, as most early indications are, is an Islamic extremist and a fan of ISIS, it will be a great opportunity for him to step up.
We will keep you posted throughout the morning.
So about 10 o'clock Eastern time yesterday, we all saw this, and it's a Fox News alert. Breaking right now, brand new details just coming in about the suspect in that deadly terror attack that took place in London.
British Prime Minister Theresa May addressing Parliament moments ago.
What I can confirm is that the man was British-born and that some years ago he was once investigated by MI5 in relation to concerns about violent extremism.
The suspect's identity has not yet been released. It will be coming shortly, though. Raids now happening across the United Kingdom to track down leads. 8 arrests made in Birmingham overnight. And in fact, one of the places was where he lived.
Birmingham is where the suspect reportedly rented that car before using it to kill the people outside of Parliament. 3 people died, 29 are hurt. The terrorist also stabbing an officer to death before being killed by police.
So meanwhile, you have Police Chief Rowley coming out relatively quickly saying it's too early to release the name of the attacker, but the Defense Secretary says the assumption is it's Islamic terrorism in some form. ISIS has already put out a statement saying, you shed our blood here, we shed your blood there.
Well, I do want to bring you some headlines this morning. We start with the Fox News alert. The Trump administration following through on its promise for more extreme vetting. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson now ordering U.S. embassies to identify, quote, populations warranting increased scrutiny and enact tighter visa screening from those groups. He also ordered a mandatory social media check for all applicants who have ever been in the areas of the world controlled by the Islamic State.